Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about whole numbers, more specifically the definition and examples. Let's get started with the definition. Whole numbers are numbers that start at 0 and go up without end. That means that whole numbers are 0 and greater. Whole numbers are the numbers we use for counting and for showing none. So if we were counting items, whole numbers would be the numbers we would use. For example, to count these hats, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So here I have 7 hats, and the numbers I use to count are whole numbers. And if I had no hats, then the whole number I would use to represent that would be 0. Whole numbers do not include the following: fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, and negative numbers. So 1/2, 5 3/4, 49/100, 7 2/10, and -3 are not whole numbers. Why aren't fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, or negative numbers considered whole numbers? Whole numbers don't include fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, or negative numbers because whole numbers are used for counting complete things. They are always complete numbers, not parts, not pieces, and never less than 0. Fractions like 1/2 or 3/4 are not whole numbers because they only show part of something. For example, you can eat half of a cookie, but you can't count half as a whole cookie. Whole numbers are used to count complete things. Mixed numbers like 3 1/4 and 7 1/2 are not whole numbers because they have 2 parts. They have a whole number and a fraction. Whole numbers cannot have fractions, so a mixed number is not a whole number. For example, if you have 3 1/4 pizzas, the 1/4 shows part of a pizza, so it is not a whole number because it isn't complete. Decimals like 2 5/10 or 4 3/10 are not whole numbers because they are numbers in between. For example, 2 5/10 comes between 2 and 3, but it isn't a complete number by itself. Another example is if a video game costs $4.99, that's not a whole number of dollars. It's between 4 and 5. Negative numbers like -1 or -5 are not whole numbers because they mean less than 0. Whole numbers start at 0 and only go up. For example, if the temperature is -5 degrees, that means it's below 0 and negative numbers are not whole numbers. Let's go over some examples and non-examples of whole numbers. Some examples include, but are not limited to, 0, 1, 5, 12, and 260. Remember that whole numbers are counting numbers, and they could also represent none, which would be 0. Non-examples include 5/6, because that's a fraction, 2 3/4, because that's a mixed number, 9/10, because that's a decimal, 2 42/100, because that's a decimal, and -6, because that is a negative number. Now let's go over some real-world examples of whole numbers. The number of pets in your house would be a whole number because you're not going to have part of a pet. The number of desks in a classroom, that is a whole number because you're not going to have part of a desk. And the number of states in the United States because that is 50 and 50 is a whole number.